Welcome to the 5 a.m. grind. This is episode number 3. And for this episode, I thought we'd talk about something that you and I have gone through. That's business school. It's where we met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've got a really awesome podcast
and
lined
show
up for everyone
prepared
today.
for you guys today. Yeah, it should be interesting.
Yeah.
I guess so. Let's dive into it then. We met in business school. Shall we tell the ladies and gentlemen where we met? Yeah, what school did we go to?
Schulich
All
School
that
of
stuff.
Business.
There you go, Schulich School of Business in Toronto.
Toronto, yeah. For those of you who don't know where Schulich School of Business is, it's, I would say, it's Midtown Toronto or North Side of Toronto?
Yeah, I don't even know what they consider that area nowadays. Yeah, Midtown,
Yeah.
North Side Toronto. Yeah. But I'd say it's, so the Schulich School of Business is consistently ranked one of the top 5 programs in Canada.
Yeah.
For those of you who are joining us internationally or from the US, one of the consistently ranked top programs in the country, and it's essentially a business school. So that's what we did. What was your major, Horace? What did you do when you went to business school?
I did finance and economics while I was at Schulich.
Okay. So we both got BBAs. That's what we graduated with. I went into the accounting route. Nice and boring. Did accounting.
Why did you choose accounting?
So good question. Good question, actually. I think if you remember, when you and I went to school, at least the school that we went to, had a heavy focus on accounting. It was just some sort of a school that was sponsored by the Big 4 firms. So when I say Big 4, that's the Big 4 accounting firms. So KPMG, Deloitte, PwC, and Ernst & Young. They sponsored the school quite a bit. So the school had this thing or this program sort of bent and tilted towards producing accountants, so good employees for the Big 4. So accounting was a pretty big focus. So I don't know. I just saw what other people were doing in school, and I thought, hey, accounting seems pretty interesting. Other people are doing it. I liked the classes and the cases we were doing, so I went into accounting.
I mean, for those of you who are already in business school, I would say that the reason that it was kind of focused in accounting was based off of, I guess, the country we were in and just like where the economy was at the time.
At the time,
Right? At that time, for example, finance wasn't as big as it is now in Canada. And as well as like entrepreneurship, venture capital, all that stuff wasn't as big. It's kind of a lot bigger. Not that it was non-existent.
It
wasn't as
totally
big back then.
I actually agree. Entrepreneurship wasn't a big thing when you and I graduated. Accounting was, right?
Entrepreneurship was non-existent when we graduated.
It was non-existent, dude.
I think there was some finance.
That's so true. That's so true.
And it was like majority of it was just a push towards accounting.
That's very true. All right, so the topics we'll cover today on business school would be, we'll ask each other whether or not business school was helpful. What are some of the drawbacks of going to business school? And then if you are considering the type of person that's sort of in the position where you're thinking of doing an MBA, we'll cover that as well and sort of give our thoughts on whether or not that's helpful. And if we do have time, we'll get to the last part of this particular topic, which is whether you should go to the US for school or stay in Canada. Right? All right, so let's jump right in then. Was business school helpful for you, Horace?
Undergrad wasn't.
Right.
I guess...
So why is that? Why was it not helpful, you think?
I feel like going, and I think you and me have had this discussion.
Yeah, we've had this multiple times.
It was because it was out of high school, you don't have a lot of experience. All you're doing is all you know about life is going to school. Especially getting into the school that we got into, you had to be really focused in high school. You did. You were a nerd. Yeah, and you weren't necessarily working or anything like that, right? You were focused on getting the grades. You may have been working here and there, but it wasn't like you really out there kind of experiencing even the labor force in a meaningful way. Right? You're experiencing it as in, I need a little bit of cash on the side maybe. But
part-time job, etc. Nothing serious.
But for the most part, you were just kind of studying. And I felt like business is not something that you could argue that about anything. That you can't just learn it and read it in a book. But I feel like business fundamentally is more of a social science than anything else. And you can't really learn it in business school. Now, in business school, what it did do was it taught you how to be good employees, but not a good employer, if that makes sense. Like, you don't really know how to start a business. And that's kind of what I was kind of thinking going into it.
I really like that point because I think that's a point worth hammering on. Just dwelling on a bit more. Business schools today, the way they're sort of structured, are really good at churning out good employees because business schools care about recruitment stats and where their students get placed, right? So they're really good at sort of grooming you to be the ideal employee, at least when you and I went, which for the benefit of the listeners and those of you watching this on YouTube, it's more than 10 years, but less than 15. We're not going to date ourselves, right? So in between that range. But business schools then, the focus was really to sort of churn out these good employees because of recruitment stats and placement and develop a strong network. And you can see why schools would do that. They weren't sort of geared to the person they wanted to go to school and then become an entrepreneur and launch their own thing. That wasn't a thing. I mean, I remember our graduating class, like you and I talked about this before, most people, you were considered a success if you had gotten a job. Either you were working for one of the accounting firms, something in finance,
like
or another,
or
a brand name firm. Exactly. If you were one of those guys in our graduating class that was starting their own business, you were looked at a bit funny. You were like, oh, well, you couldn't get a job. That's why you're doing your own business, right? You were sort of seen as a failure.
You have something to say until you get a real job.
Yeah, so, exactly.
So
they're going to do this until it tides you over until you get a real job, whatever the hell that means.
Yeah. But I feel like if you look back at what we were taught in business school, right? Sure, there was a lot of things where, like, okay, for example, like with finance or accounting, you're learning how to, like, read financial statements. But a lot of it was focused in on making good reports, making sure that they're clean, making sure you're communicating presentations or information effectively, making sure that, like, you're presenting yourself in a business-like manner, you're working with other people well to come to a conclusion. You're not really figuring out how to make decisions.
That's very
when it's
true.
crunch time. Right? Like, what's the real nature of a decision? It was so, I would say, stupid. So the fact that, for example, like one example is that when you're going to go buy a business, right? Business school is like, oh my God, you got to have the discount cash flows. You got to have all these models that you're going into Excel. You got to figure out like what your cost of goods are. You got to figure out what your profitability is. And it's going to be like in this industry, it's going to be a 3 multiplier. In that industry, it's going to be a 10 multiplier, right? Whatever it is. And everybody's just like, all right, so that means that there's like this exact number that's like this, that this business is worth.
Like valuation is like this exact number.
But that's not the case, man. When you're in the industry, you're like, all right. When you're the decision maker, you're going to be looking at so many other things, and it's like your gut feeling. Is this like something I'm willing to pay for? Yeah, you're willing to put.
It's more art than science. I think what we're going into is like the next question that I have here, which is you're talking about one of the big drawbacks of business school, right? Which is, it tends to be very theoretical in nature, not very practical, sometimes even detached or removed from the way things actually get done.
And that prevents you from ever starting your own business, I feel like.
Right.
Because you think that business is a clean, sanitized, this report goes there, this is how you get customers, that's how you fulfill your orders, and then that's it, right?
Yeah.
If you're managing a business, it's incredibly important, and again, for you to have those kind of balance, that balance there,
right? To
make sure everything is in order.
Like, because for management, etc., that sort of thing.
For like administering the business, right? Like if I, for example, if I'm starting a business, if I have a successful business, in a certain area, now I need managers. I need good employees, that show up every day. They're going to give me nice graphs, so I can make a decision, and they're going around making sure that everything is, the processes are down right. And so that one. Like, I felt like business school in that sense is for you to not even develop processes, but take processes as like religion, and then you're basically kind of implementing them with just dedication.
Right. Very
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But then if you want to start your own thing, it's chaotic. There are no processes because you're designing those processes as you figure your business out.
I like that point a lot, actually, because when you're going to do your own startup, it is messy. Reality is messy, right? It's chaotic, it's disorganized. And I think the people that really succeed with startups and things like that are people that make sense of chaos. Right? And the insanity.
I mean, starting a business is a fundamentally artistic endeavor. It's not a logical or like a reasonable endeavor. You are going into the market.
I like that.
Like, okay, Elon Musk had a quote where he says, like, entrepreneurship, it's like chewing glass and looking
into the void. Yeah. Just like chewing glass, eating glass, and looking into the void.
You're in pain.
I think it's something like that.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Trying to create something.
And you're alone.
And you don't know 100% if this is going to be successful.
Yeah. Absolutely true.
So you're trying to make sense out of just tidbits, and you have a vision. It's in your mind. You're trying to implement it and execute it the best you can.
Yeah.
But you don't really know. Whereas administering the business, you're like, oh, today sales were like X amount. Tomorrow we're projecting them to be
blah,
X
blah,
plus
blah.
Y,
Yeah.
And then you keep chugging along.
Just keep chugging along. I totally agree. I think what I'll do is I totally agree. Business school is very theoretical. I think the other point that I'd like to make on this one, especially about the drawbacks of business school, is it's a general flaw with post-secondary education in general. And that is that when you go to a lot of elite institutions, like some of the top business schools in Canada, and I think the experience is the same in the US, quite frankly, and around the world, you've been an A student. You've been a really good student. You've always had good marks in high school, in post-secondary as well, and you're used to succeeding and performing at that high level. The problem with that is real life, and if you're going to take an you're going to start a real business and have a startup, etc., you got to get used to the idea of failing, which is something a lot of business students, when they're elite performers like this, have no experience of, right? Because you've been told all along that failing is the worst thing that could happen to you. It's absolutely terrible.
Yeah,
and you can attest. Yeah.
It's not like, so there's one thing where you're not taught how to fail. But then I feel like they go the exact opposite direction. Whereas if you fail, there's something wrong.
There's something wrong, exactly. Yeah. So, which I think is terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible. Like failure isn't given context at some of these schools, right? It's just said that, oh my God, don't fail because blah blah blah. You won't get the marks you want. You won't go ahead. Your GPA will be crappy. The thing is, though, failure is one of the best teachers, right?
Yeah, 100% agree.
Right? One of the best teachers. And I'm sure you can attest. We both sort of have, you run your own practice. I have my own accounting firm. You can sort of say that, hey, like, until you got to try stuff out to see if it actually sticks and works. And most of the time it's not going to work. And that's okay. You're sort of experimenting and trying things out. And then eventually you'll figure it out.
So, like, I feel like entrepreneurship is more of a quest for the truth.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out what works.
Yeah.
So you're not as heavily focused on the failures as other people may be. Not that you ignore it completely. You take it's valuable information that comes in, and now you could say, hey, I failed. Why did I fail? What did I do here? What could I change? What's the next step? Where do I move from here? Maybe I could change this. Maybe I could change that. And keep on. It's that iterative process where you're getting back up, you get knocked down, you get back up, you get knocked down. But the point is you're trying to find the truth.
Yeah.
Whereas in business school and often enough in like all these educational institutions, like when you're being graded, right, you're the fact that like your exam is worth X amount and they're not really testing you on what you've learned. It's they're testing you on what you've memorized and what you can give to them.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It's
true.
not about like, okay, you're not creating dynamic
like
individuals. They're very stagnant and stale in a way.
Yeah.
Because you can memorize something, you throw it back on there.
Yeah.
But like, what if something goes wrong? What if it goes here?
So
like,
true.
how can you get back up?
It's so true. I think, and I don't know if business schools will ever do this, but the way to sort of get around this problem about, the lack of teaching your students of the valuable lessons from failure and then business schools being too theoretical is in a way maybe trying to get students to actually, do stuff in real life, whether that's launch some sort of a startup while they're in school and see it fail and talk about why it failed, talk about the postmortem, etc., and evaluate that. That would be something I think that is very valuable. I don't know if schools are doing that right now. Maybe they are. Maybe they've pivoted. I'm not sure.
I'd like to be a little bit more cynical about that. And I would say that the business schools have no incentive to do any of that.
Really? Okay.
I feel like their incentive is they're getting, if anything, they're getting donations from all these big firms.
They are.
Right?
Yeah, they're always heavily sponsored by corporate
so then
donors.
Their incentive is to please them. Right?
Yeah.
Because they keep those
donations. So turn out those good employees. Yeah.
So why would you want to create entrepreneurs? You're creating competition for the individuals, theoretically again, for the firms that are sponsoring you, potential competition. And secondly, you're not producing anybody of value to them.
To those
so
firms.
Why would they want to invest in your
That's
institution?
So true. That's so true.
And then it affects a lot of other things. You get less, your endowment is smaller, your rankings go down, you're not like attracting the right people. Like it's a snowball effect.
That's true. Would you want to go to a school that teaches people how to fail so they can, I don't know, launch their own businesses, right? If it's like a school that teaches failure, a lot of people will be like, well, what is this? No, business school's all about, getting placements and stuff like that. It's so true. It's a tough concept to sort of put into practice.
And I think the best way to learn about entrepreneurship is the school of hard knocks, man. It's just like you fail, you get back up. Every single, not every single, but I would say a lot of the billionaires you look at, they started off selling.
They did?
At Mark
that's absolutely
Cuban,
true.
You look at Ray Dalio, you look at anybody, right? They're out there and they're selling things. Right? And that's where they figure things out.
It's so true.
Where they understand stuff.
Life in essence is a big sales job, right? You're always selling yourself, something you have, a skill set that you have. You're selling yourself to your employer as well because of the skill set you bring on your resume. You're selling yourself to your potential spouse because you're trying to tell her why she should go out with you. It's always stuff like that, right? You got to hone in those sales skills.
And I feel like sales, first of all, it's not taught in business school, and I feel like it's also seen as a dirty word.
It's like the greasy oil salesman or whatever it is. It's got a bad reputation.
So it's like sales fundamentally, how I perceive it is everybody has their own cognitive biases when they're moving into something, when they want to look at something, when they want to buy something. And those biases are a perspective or a product of their own perspective, their experiences in life.
Right.
And maybe they're not looking at that product or service the correct way. You as a salesperson are bringing to their attention the things that they value the most, so that they can see the product or service for what it is. Good example I'll say is you have for example, a lot of startup entrepreneurs who feel like, okay, I can make my own partnership agreement. Why do I need a lawyer? So obviously, if I'm a lawyer, I'm gonna be they're skeptical. They'll come to me. Obviously, if he's a lawyer, he's gonna be trying to pitch his services. The reality is that if you go to effective counsel, they're not trying to put a template agreement together. They know why the different clauses are there. They know that your business is looking one way today and it's going to look a certain way 5 years from now. And you need to have the proper infrastructure in place that will need to be replaced. And again, it's an iterative process, but you have a roadmap of where your business is going to go from a legal infrastructure, or even an accounting infrastructure or a marketing infrastructure, whatever it is. So it becomes my job to say, hey, listen, you can go out and you can find a template online, and then you can plug and play, put your names on there, and then you can put your what you feel is reasonable at the moment. You can put all those clauses in there. But do you know what kind of problems startups face 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What are the bigger issues? What are they looking at? And how do you get across, or how do you overcome those issues so that your business is constantly growing and is resilient enough to take on those challenges? Those are not the things that people are looking at. They're like, all right, well, I have a partnership agreement, so I'm going to do that. So that is a sales, right? So with me saying that, the point, bringing it back to the sales side, it's just that it's something that you're convincing other people about, and it's bringing it to their kind of attention.
Agreed. And I think we could do an entire podcast on sales, to be honest, because it's a really important skill set that we should definitely hit on. Absolutely.
Bringing it back to where we started.
Bringing it back to business schools, So the third little sub-question or topic that I have is, do you think an MBA is useful?
Me, I would say yes and no. I would definitely want to do an executive MBA. One of the things that I think we discussed in undergrad, right? I think that there's a lot of people who were doing the undergrad and they thought that an executive MBA, they'd laugh at it.
They think what's an MBA? Why do people do this? Yeah.
And so for me, it's okay, well, most of the stuff that you learn in business school, you can learn on your own.
You can. Correct.
And an executive MBA, now you're networking. So actually, let me backtrack a little bit. When I said most of the things that you can learn on your own, I mean the things that you can learn from a book.
Yeah.
Right? You
like a discounted cash flow. You don't need to go to business school to learn that. There are plenty of people who run businesses today who don't have a business background, like pharma companies, engineering firms. They're not business people. They sort of learn business skill sets as they've sort of worked during their careers. And you get today, like you can sort of learn some of these courses on the side as well.
I mean, if you have the aptitude to get into business school, you have the aptitude to learn, like teach yourself all of that stuff as well. The biggest, I think, learning opportunity in a business school is networking. Right. And meeting other individuals.
For an MBA, like you're saying,
that's why I'd go to an executive MBA, because everybody is at a certain level in their career. They have a certain experience that they've kind of gone through. They're facing certain challenges, certain problems in their business. They have a certain perspective. And so those are the individuals that I would like to network with. And that would be the reason I'd want to do business school. Which is basically to increase my, I guess, access to knowledge through networking and to getting in touch with the right people.
The right people, right?
What about
that makes sense. That makes sense. For me, I think an MBA is, I don't know. I don't think it's very useful, and here's why I say that. I take sort of a different view from you. And the reason why I say that is because an MBA is expensive, right? You're paying for tuition, which is $100,000, and then you're giving up at least 2 years, 2 years of salary? Let's say if you're also making something around close to 6 figures, you're giving that up as well. That's a huge cost, right? Whatever it is that you're trying to gain out of an MBA, let's say if it's, I don't know, you want to start a startup, like let's say, I think that's a completely useless reason to do an MBA, but whatever, right? Or let's say, I don't know, you want to take the next step in your career. An MBA isn't necessarily going to be, it might help in some cases, but not necessarily, right? I think you could still get there if you network hard, if you're very deliberate about it, reach out to the right people. It might take time. It might take a couple of years as well. But at least you're not giving up that salary and paying that $100,000 that you would have to fork over for an MBA. I mean, I totally agree, though. The point that you're making about having a network is important. I just don't know. Maybe I think you can sort of build that outside of school too, right?
No, 100%.
If you're very sort of diligent about it and just reach out to people. Of course, maybe the caliber of people, like the chance encounters that you get in school, that's sort of different that you would get like working.
Yeah, right? I agree that you could always network on your own. 100%. And I always encourage that.
But maybe it's the chance encounters, right? Like meeting someone that, I don't know, works at a particular field that can open up a door for you.
There's a chance, but there's also, I feel like, if you go to a good business school, they have a network, and then it's
you can
easier.
leverage it, is what you're saying.
So if I call somebody, if we call somebody from Schulich, there's, like, we're human beings at the end of the day, right? So there's a connection. Hey, we went to the same school. So you're already starting off on something that you can, and that means a lot, because now you can, like, it may bring the other person's guard down a little bit. And then you have that networking opportunity. So, I mean, and that might sound stupid as to, like, why, even if you didn't go, like, you never saw them in the school, or you guys graduated in different years, you're never together. The fact that you went to the same school, sometimes it's like you're on the same team in a way, right? And you can relate to them. So in that sense, again, it comes down to, if you're spending, for example, if you go to do business school, I mean, EMBAs in the States, I think it costs $250 or something like that.
Right? $250.
Yeah, and 2 years.
And then 2 years of salary you're giving up as well.
The thing is, you're still working.
Oh, so an MBA, right.
But if you say, even an MBA, if you look at tuition, all of that, it could reach the same amount, $250,000, right? If you look at like housing, or where you're staying, your books and all of that, $250, and then 2 years, if you're making at least $150, right, between those, it's $300, right? So you're spending $550,000 on this degree. It's a gamble. Right?
That is, and let's be honest, you and I both know this. Like, especially if you're doing an MBA, there are plenty of unemployed MBAs. I'm sorry to say. I know it's like, it sounds like a taboo subject that I'm saying, but it's absolutely true. The number of MBAs that are unemployed is pretty damn high. At least in Toronto. I'm sure it's the same in other cities as well. An MBA doesn't guarantee you a job. There's no guarantee. It's like sort of taking a big gamble on a degree, right? And I don't know, maybe it makes sense for some people if you're trying to do a big career pivot, going from finance to consulting. But I don't know, if you're trying to do your own startup, launch an entrepreneurial venture, I'm not sure if that's the best idea. It might take you longer to do it outside of school, but you might learn other things that you wouldn't learn in school, right? And that's stuff that you can't just dismiss.
Yeah, I feel like if you want to start your own business, you just start it.
Yeah, that's what it is, right? I think people want to spend that 100 grand or 250. Dude, like your answer is not spending 250 grand. It's starting it, whatever it is that you want to do.
I mean, if you spent that 250 on your business, it'd go further.
It would go further. Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. That's actually a really good point.
People are more willing to spend 250,000 on an MBA degree than they are taking out loans and starting their own business.
Their own business. Yeah. Imagine if you. Yeah, that's true. I like that. What if you invested 250,000 in your startup? What would you come up with? That's a pretty good challenge.
No, 100. You'll have a lot of people who are, because the thing is, there's already social acceptance with the MBA.
Yeah.
So when you have, you psychologically think you have something.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
With the startup, you're like, what if I lose it? What if I don't get it back? Like, it's gonna be gone.
Yeah.
You don't realize with the learning experience that you're gonna have, if you're spending that kind of money, and you're doing it wisely, is going to be worth more than the NBA or the 250,000.
Yeah. Right? So true.
So because you're gonna, you might, a lot of it is going to get wasted, and it may be, but like you're going to be constantly learning. You look at a lot of these startups in Silicon Valley. I mean, a lot of it is experimentation in the beginning until they get their footing right.
Yeah. So true. All right. So last one here. Would you go to the U.S. Would you go for school? Would you do it in the U.S. or Canada?
I'd only do it in the U.S.
You would do it in the U.S.?
I'd only do because again.
Your undergrad as well, or just the MBA, or just the EMBA? Because like you're
EMBA only. Undergrad. I mean, I guess undergrad. If I get into like an Ivy League or something like that, I'd go. But I do feel like I appreciate the Canadian education system more for the learning aspect of it, right? So therefore, I would in undergrad, I would want to learn, and so. Especially like, and I think we've had this is a different discussion, but I wouldn't do a business school. I would do like maybe a bachelor in arts, right, or something like that. I think
so. That not even do business, as your degree.
And I feel like that would be better in Canada,
right?
Because I just feel like the learning experience would be better.
Yeah.
But the networking experience, I feel like, would be better in the States.
Right.
And I wouldn't just go to any business school. It has to be like a top 10.
Like a top 10 school, yeah. I think, I'd sort of say the same thing as well. If I was to go to school in the U.S. and Canada, I think for undergrad doing in Canada is pretty good. It's not bad. If you get a chance to do it at one of the Ivy Leagues, go for it. But then for someone in my position with my experience, I think if I was to do an MBA and I would really have to do it for that networking opportunity or whatever it is that I'm sort of looking for, I'm definitely not looking for that right now. But if I was to do it for those reasons, just hypothetically speaking, I think I would definitely look at going to the U.S. Because just broaden the experience, increase, like you said, sort of broaden your horizons, meet different people, expand your base of alumni and the people, your network and the people you can reach out to. I think to me that's a very valuable. So going to the U.S. would be something I'd consider quite strongly.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't do it here. I'm not to say that it's not worth anything, but I think there's different people who need different like levels of education. That's fine. But for me, it wouldn't be worth it.
It wouldn't be worth it.
One thing I did want to touch upon,
go for
was that I feel like a lot of people say, "Hey, I need to do an MBA to be more valuable to my employer, or to get that next promotion." I think that's very untrue.
Right. People who say, "Oh, I need an MBA to reach that next level."
No, you need to reach that next level. You need to network and know your stuff.
Yeah. To be honest, like guys, MBAs are getting very common. Very common. Yeah. Everyone has an MBA. It's becoming very, very common. Yeah. It used to be this type of thing. I think this was even before I graduated. Maybe this type of thing they used to have that used to qualify you for certain jobs. But now, I'm sorry. Like everybody has one. Yeah. I think even companies are sort of going for non-traditional backgrounds. Like I think Google probably hires like people who didn't even go to school. They're just programmers on the side.
Yeah, they're moving more towards experience. More heavily.
And the way the world is right now, it's also changing as well. The stuff you learn in an MBA is pretty much very quickly irrelevant in 5 years after you graduate because there's so much disruption, so much change in different environments.
And I feel like though, if you go like 20, 30 years ago, the access to the type of information people had was limited, so you went to business school to figure it out. And there's less people who did that, right? So then, obviously, at that point, it became very valuable. Yeah. But now it's very prominent. That information you can figure out yourself.
Yeah, you can get it yourself.
And so the value of it naturally goes down.
Yeah, totally. All right, so key takeaways, business school. We got 1 more minute left. Your key thoughts. Do it, not do it.
I would say, yes and no, depending on what your background is. If you're starting a business, start the business.
Yeah.
Don't do the MBA.
Totally agree. I think for me, it would be If you're an undergrad, business school is really good. I'd go ahead and do it if that's the option you want to go for. But if you're considering postgraduate degree, like some sort of an MBA, I would think twice about it. And maybe if it is that you want to start a startup, just start it. Screw the MBA. It's not worth it. All right, guys, that's it for this week.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in.
Take care.
Take care. Peace.